Welcome to From Doubt to Destiny,
the podcast where dreams come alive. I'm Eden Ryder, the Dream Maker.
And I'm Stacie Trott, the Queen Maker. We're here to give your dreams the royal treatment that they deserve. Get ready to unlock your queen
and unleash her dreams.
I'm Stacie Trott, here with my co-host,
Eden Ryder.
Thank you for joining us. And our topic today, if it's your first time joining us, is, I wish I had we didn't get sound effects so we can do like a little drum roll. Yeah. This one we both agreed was is a weighty word. We actually said it in an earlier podcast and we said, let's do a conversation about that. I think that's a good something to talk about. And so the topic today is enoughness. Every episode, we are going to have a topic, discuss the tension around it. We are going to then hopefully have some transformational thoughts, some we had, some we discover in this conversation, and then ending with some takeaways, things that we hope you will want to think about differently, maybe take an action item, have a conversation, do a thing. So a topic, attention, transformational thoughts, and a takeaway. So today's topic is enoughness. I don't recall the context in which I said it. I cringe a little bit because I will say that, just being fully transparent, I am probably in a evolving journey of strengthening my knowledge and acceptance of myself with being enough. And I think I do a decent, sometimes probably really good job of projecting enoughness. But really, in the inside, there's who do you think you are going on, and other various versions of struggling with it. So before I talk too much about enoughness, let's just see what enoughness is. I Googled it. What came up is enoughness is defined as the state of being enough, which that's not very helpful, or having sufficiency or adequacy. Some say that enoughness can also mean, I don't know why I'm looking at it over here and talking to the mic here. That would be really, let me move it where I'm comfortable. It says, some say that enoughness can also mean feeling comfortable with who you are, moving towards self-acceptance, realizing that you only need to be yourself, understanding that you don't need to be different or better, and considering that your core self is fundamentally enough. The way that I would like to think about this when I read that before we got on was enoughness, I would say, is believing that I was enough when I was designed. When I was growing up, there was a phrase, I grew up in church, and there was a phrase that people would say, and it was, God don't make no junk. And so it's like, you were designed enough before the world had made an imprint and an impact on you. And there's all these things that come in that try to make you feel like you're not enough. And then there's a journey of pushing back, discovering, loving, accepting yourself to get to the place of, I gotta operate from a place of enoughness. And I think it's not something you conquer and then you got it. It's something you're kind of always conquering. I think women struggle with it way more than men do, or it shows up differently. I'll say, I think in men, it shows up in this, machismo kind of ways. Whereas women, I think it shows up with a lot more vulnerability or defensiveness. So what does enoughness mean to you, Eden? I take a deep breath because it's a weighty word. Hopefully by the end we'll be feeling light and fluffy about enoughness, but I can say, and just being honest, I'm going into the conversation like, this one's weighty. So what does enoughness mean to you, Eden?
Yeah, definitely felt weighty coming into the topic, which is funny because I feel like it's interesting. I think this is something I've been working on for a very long time. So like you said, I think it's an ever evolving thing, or like something that's continuously being worked on. However, just when I always think like I'll actually like say to my therapist, like, I already worked through this. Like I already did this. I already put this behind me. Like it's not showing up anymore. And I think for me, like enoughness, that feeling of like being like worthy or like accepted or like, I don't know. I think I always use the thing of like believing like people like love me, but it doesn't mean like they stay or they're always going to be there. Like there's just this, I think a lot of that comes up around it of feeling like I need to not perform, but that like it's a weight or pressure on me that like I need to be a certain way to make sure that I'm maintaining all of these relationships or like being good or doing it the right way so that people like do stay in my life or will be there or like be there for me or that I am like worthy of their love or like I guess it kind of
Yeah.
shows up like that. And then what's interesting is I feel like I work through a lot of that like in therapy and like my own self analysis and just going from a child to an adult and having an adult brain to like psychoanalyze myself as a child. But then it will still show up in like the smallest, most nuanced things that will come up in therapy. And like, I think, I don't know, it's probably been 30 days now, but like, I say I'm over it. And then I got put on a 30-day I'm enough challenge by my therapist, like probably 20 days ago. So
What was
I
that challenge? I want to hear about that.
just like when I'm writing like in my journal or like I'm very big with like affirmations and stuff. So I'll like say I'm enough. Like every morning I'll start, and even when I do my 5-minute journal, one of my like affirmations for the day is just saying I am enough. And then I've mentioned I'm in a coaching
That's,
program.
but hold on, hold on. You say I'm enough?
I know,
It's like it's like I think I
not like that. That's like, am I?
am.
That's
Yeah,
the
am
question.
I? I
So
think I am. Yeah.
that's for me. Yeah, talking long
Is
winded,
it
but
because you're working through it and it's not there's some moments where it's still like, am I like
no,
I'm
it's
gonna say
for
I am, so I believe I am,
I
or I
think it's
believe I
saying
am?
it right now where I'm like now thinking about it again. So like the emotions are coming up. I
Yeah.
in the morning when I say it's a lot more grounded than that just was.
Yeah.
That was very high.
I was like, let's pause and realize, like, is it happening right now? Like, she's only on day 20, guys. She's got 10 more days. By day 30, she'll have it.
It's funny if I look back, I'm probably like past the 30-day mark, but
Yeah.
we're somewhere in
Hmm.
the mix.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then it still comes up like it's come up on like coaching calls where we're doing like practice sessions with like other ladies in my coaching group, and it will come up in the smallest ways of like I'll be talking about like posting on social media, which to me seems so, I don't know, like nothing that serious, and then it will connect back to this idea of enoughness or like worthiness or like being authentic. So it definitely, no, I'm talking about what it means to me, but like it rears its head in a lot of ways, even if they seem like on a smaller scale, where I see how this recurring like theme comes up. And I also have realized, especially right now, like being in more spaces with women of like all ages, and that it also affects them, which is enlightening and also makes me feel, you feel seen and like, oh, like I'm not, you don't have to take it so, I guess, so heavy. Like it lightens it up a bit of this happens a lot. And I think a lot of it is just, I don't know, upbringing. I don't know, society. Like, I don't know what it is, but
I think girls are
yeah.
raised differently than boys, and the the struggle with enoughness starts, I think, way earlier than we would like to admit. And yeah, so I definitely think we get oriented to a struggle with it. And that's only from this perspective, right? Men might be like, yeah, I struggle with it too. I can't think of too many men that would be able to talk about, or would say they feel the same way about enoughness the way that I know I have had many conversations with women about and the classic conversation I've had with women is like, job description posted, man looks at it, he's got 2 out of the 10 things on the list, and he's like, I'd kill that. Woman looks at the job description, she's got 8 out of the 10, and she's like, I don't think I'm the right candidate. And so it's kind of like he's almost like overconfident and underqualified. And then and she's overqualified or perfectly qualified. And she's like, these 2 things there, I just don't do that well. And, I you probably shouldn't consider me for the job. And so it's an orientation to the way we think about ourselves, and it probably is triggered by something that happens pretty early on, and as a result we get some programming incorrectly in our little child's brain, trying to make sense of the world, and our takeaway of adult things that are happening around us is incorrect, and we don't know that. And so it's almost like you're building something and something that shouldn't be in there gets in, and then you keep building. So now it becomes a part of the story and it gets integrated in, and that wasn't supposed to be there, but it got in. And then you spend years in therapy trying to figure out where it got in, how it got in, and then how you can get it out or forgive yourself for it being in there, and then kind of somehow learn to live with it not having such a big impact. So I know you have some understanding. I probably have an example too of like where the enoughness struggle may not be the original one, but it's like one of the factors. So where did the enoughness struggle kind of the root of it beginnings happen for you? I think ours is similar.
Yeah, I think, which I know again, it happens to like so many people, so I'm not like special in that way, but my parents got divorced when I was very young. So I think it was like three, maybe, 3, 4, and then both started different relationships. Which, again, as an adult, it's amazing because I have a amazing supportive support system and a lot of siblings and everything. But again, as like a child, I think it was kind of feeling like I don't fit in anywhere, and just like the disorientation of like going back and forth, or like I don't know. I remember even thinking like I was primarily at school at my mom's side of the family, but then like obviously I had my dad's last name, but like the school I went to, there was no Hendrix. So like, and then I remember my mom changed her last name, like that being, I don't even know if she might not even know this, but I remember when she changed her last name, that being like kind of not traumatic, but I remember it being like a moment of like, I don't have the same last name as her anymore. And then
What does this mean?
I'm the only
Right?
person like
Yeah.
at school so I didn't have like that connection to, I don't know, like my people or like whoever that was. And then my dad like started another young family, which again, hindsight, like it's all amazing things. But I think when you're a kid, like processing it, I I definitely think it stemmed from there. I'll just say that. I think it
Yeah.
was more of just like, where do I fit in this? And I've talked about it before. Like, I've always had this strong drive and desire of being a wife and a mother. And that's kind of fueled me. And I think it had a lot to do with like, I wanted like where I fit in and to like create my own unit, or like my little, I don't know, like my like little safe space of these
The
are my
way I'm
people.
thinking about it is you were in something that felt whole and then it was broken. And then you had to figure out how to exist in this broken, that ultimately you said had some beauty in it, pieces. But because of that brokenness, there was something that said, I'm going to get an opportunity to start my own whole thing
Yeah.
without the brokenness when it's my turn. And that became a big thing for you of I'm going to be a wife and I'm going to be a mother, and when I do it I want it to look like what I had hopes maybe it could have looked like for me. Because you found your way, but there was messiness in the
Yeah.
journey of that flopping around, and like, I'm the only Hendrick here. What does that mean? Like, what does that look like? Who are my people? Where's my tribe? So, okay, that's took how many years of journey, relationships, therapy to get to the place where you could figure out the thread that went back there? Would you say it took like,
I mean, I think I figured it out in dating, I would say, is like, so I think I figured it out pretty early. I don't think I realized like maybe my drive to like want to be a mom. I mean, and also maybe it was designed that way. I can't say all that, but I would definitely figure out that there was some negative aspects of it that I needed to work through. I definitely had a very like clear, I'd say, moments when I was dating,
yeah,
because there was just so much emphasis on it and I was so hard on myself, and I feel like I would be like
Emphasis on wanting to be married and have children.
well, emphasis like on the relationship and like so
Okay.
much pressure on myself where I feel like I would like distort myself more or like do everything for that relationship and try to be like their everything, and I would like stop everything I'm doing for that person, or like just everything was about them. Where I think in other like situations my parents would be like, you would easily tell us how you feel about that, but then like I would just kind of distort myself, I think, for that person. And just such an emphasis on finding a relationship, and like that was the dream, so everything else kind of stopped of like I need this to work, and like I kind of will start living once we're like together and this is moving forward. So I think it came out very clearly like while I was dating, where I was like, shoot, like I need to work. I don't know if I realized it right away, but it started to become clearer and clearer that I got really good at being by myself. And then it would show up, I think, the most in relationships. And then it got to a point that I like knew I needed therapy, but I'm like, well, I know I need therapy, but and I know what the root cause is, and I'm just not going to deal with it. So I didn't actually get therapy as a kid. I got
When you
some.
became aware that you needed it,
No, because I
because
was like, I know what it is. I just need to work on myself. And so I didn't actually, I think I didn't get therapy until I was already like married, and which is interesting. I feel like I got the quote unquote dream. Like I found the person, had my daughter, and then actually, which was interesting, I'm like, this is everything I wanted. And I'm like, shoot, like I know that there was like some trauma there of how I processed things as a kid and now that I'm an adult. And like, I clearly don't know how to fix it myself. But now I had everything I quote unquote wanted, that I'm like, I don't want to screw this up. And like, I've gotten this far. Like, I need help. I need support of like,
yeah,
to move this forward. So yeah,
there's
I'd
beauty
say,
in that. That you, when you got the thing, like you wouldn't do it for you, but once you had them,
right.
you did it for the dream.
Yeah.
It was the dream of having the thing, and then you're like, now that I have it, I care too much to mess it to not try to do it,
With
with
my
the
own
measure of
resources that I
brokenness. Yeah,
currently, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's beautiful. I one of the things that I have said before, um, is children are a reason to try to be the best version of yourself you can be, right? Like there's things you're willing to kind of limp along with that after you have kids, you're like, I gotta do better. Because they're a why. They're a why. So that's lovely. I don't think we've had that conversation where you've said that before. Like, I know once, you know, I think after you had Zaria, stuff was like, you're not okay. I know you think you are, but you're not.
Yeah.
And so eventually, you did it. But I think part of the reason why the timing, because I probably said it before and you were just like, I know what the answer is. I know what it is.
Yeah.
But after this little human that's relying on you shows up, you're like, okay, maybe I need to figure out how to do it better. I remember when I had my son, I was very much wanting to do it so perfectly. And I remember saying to a colleague, I just don't want to screw him up. And she said, it's not a question of if you're going to screw it up, it's how badly. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was actually very freeing because
Yeah.
I was like, don't try to be so perfect that you think you can somehow master perfection, because that's not it. The goal is to just minimize the damage, because you're going to make mistakes because you're human. And that was really freeing. So you found the thread of enoughness connecting to the root of it, maybe showing up in this developing brain that was trying to make sense of what the grown-ups are doing.
Yes.
And I think that's a very common story. It's a very common place of where the trauma and root occurs. And I love even the way that you told it, because you didn't like blame anybody. You were just like, this is just what happened and how I experienced it, and the impact that figuring out who I was in the midst of the whole story that was unfolding, like how to make sense of where do I fit in this. So now that you're aware, okay, this is where the root comes, how are you connecting with your journey of enoughness?
Again, I feel like in such a better place with it overall. Like I don't have those like huge like triggering points. Like I have an amazing relationship with like my husband. So like I did a lot of that work prior to, but then there are way like and I don't feel like I do so much more like the comparison to like other women or other things like on a grand scale. I think it's still though interestingly like again it came up in therapy somewhat recently even I think when we're funny enough, I think I was talking about like preparing for the podcast and I was like Stacey's really good at like off the cuff of like in the moment and stuff and I'm like I'm such a planner and like I am very like analytical and like I like read through things and I was like going I think I was like starting to go down a whole list and I think I brought up Stefan and Isaiah to be like okay wait
Oh,
stop like if we needed another Stacey and if we needed another Stefan like we wouldn't you know what I mean like we wouldn't need Eden like you don't need to change how you are like so that's always like we need to like take a step back of like I think we need to go back to like I am enough so it does come up with him still or it comes up for me, but I'm saying in my like therapy sessions, it comes up more like that I'm not even thinking it's going to connect back to this. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm not like in this state of like, oh my, like trauma or like where I'm super emotional. I'm just genuinely sharing like my thought process and I'm in a much more calmer state about it, but it's like something I'm thinking about. And what's interesting is it will at times go back to this idea of enoughness when I'm like, really? Like even there? Like, even
I
in like
thought I
this,
had figured
I
this
thought
out.
yeah, like
Yeah,
so I think it always like rears its
pops up.
head at times. And the more again, this idea of like trusting and not, I think it's I like trusting myself more of like I have these initial like instincts or gut feelings or like I want to say this, I want to share, but then I'll start thinking I need to stop that second, but like I think I need to lean more into my like initial feelings and like gut response and like those downloads I get and not talk myself out of them because I think that's still where the like strangely I think with doing this podcast and like my coaching business and starting to share myself more on social media that's where I think it's showing up is like I go down I have these like things I want to do or share or say and then the editing starts happening of like well like you know what I mean like I start
Yeah,
then
yeah, I
comparing
totally
or
understand.
so
I think it's part of why I don't like to plan because then I'll over and then
analyze this
yes,
yeah
correct.
yeah
Someone's like that gives me more anxiety
okay.
versus like I'm just gonna show up and then but that does come from me having developed a trust over the course of my probably adult life of trusting that well it's two things. One, trusting that I'll say them in the opposite. One, getting feedback that things that I have said have been impactful to people. And then me trying to figure out, okay, how did I do that? What did I say? And then going, you didn't pre plan that. And then the second part comes from realizing, trusting that God has designed me in such a way, and something about my journey and walk with Him has evolved in a way where I open my mouth, and most of what comes out is what He wants to be said because I don't have preconceived ideas about it before I enter into that space. There's like this trust that I'm almost like on assignment. So I just show up and I'm like, it's interesting because I think as I'm saying this out loud, if I get in my head about the enoughness, it becomes a problem. If I don't, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what you're saying. Like, if I just let it come in and out, I'm good. But if I come in and I start chewing on it and thinking about it and processing it and deciding if it's good
Yes.
enough, then I start putting it in the, oh, wait, this isn't enough. So, but I was also going to say that when you were saying in your sessions with Isaiah, you're like, she's on the cuff and I'm a planner. And I'll just tell you in my sessions, I'm like, I really want to work on being more of a planner. He doesn't divulge
Right.
confidences, but this poor man is probably sitting there going, this one wants to do more what this one's doing. And this one's like, I really wish I could be more organized and think ahead and be more of a planner. So it's just it's the irony of it is Not satisfied with the gifts you got, right? You always want to have a different gifts. And then two, not embracing, and I think you and I are totally working on this. I don't have to be it. I just need it in my orbit.
Yes.
Like, because if I was a planner and you were a planner, who's going to do the
Right. We
waiting
kind
part?
of, yeah, exactly.
We'd be over replicating the same gifts. And that's why God doesn't put us with the same. He puts us with different so we can complement and conquer. There's a verse in the Bible that talks about one can put 1,000 to flight and two can put 10,000 to flight. God's math of the beauty of when I take the superpower I put in one container and the superpower I put in another container, my multiplication doesn't make sense. One and one is supposed to produce two, but his one and one produces 10. And so that's really where it's like finding it in your orbit and connecting with it and allowing the beauty of that partnership to produce the 10 multiplication it's supposed to, versus like, man, I really want to be like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, telling him, I wish I had more room and space to sit and plan because I really admire that gift in other people. And I think there's some room for me to do that in certain aspects of my life where feel like things sneak up on me, and I hate that they snuck up on me. But I don't think that I'm supposed to be what the gifts are that God has blessed me with to have in my life, and vice versa. So it's funny how, like, I wonder if he's making that connection as he's
Yeah.
having these
I know.
conversations.
God.
Well, he'll listen to this and hopefully he'll laugh at it. So enoughness is a thing and it's a struggle. I love that you were able to find the thread of where it showed up initially and then how it kind of, it's almost like a piece of baking a cake and something got in there that wasn't supposed to be in there. And so now it's in the cake and now it's affected the way the cake tastes. And it can still be a pretty cake, but the inside is like, it has ingredients in it that were meant to be there. But what do you do? Right? It's in there now. So it's done. It's got baked in. And I think one of the ways to help as we are parenting children is looking for those ways to have conversations with these little humans about how they're feeling, what they're thinking, how things are impacting them, because I don't think the generations that raised us, the many that came before us, knew to kind of go in there and be like, what's going on? Is there anything
Yeah.
you want to talk about? I know this happens and you might have some feelings about it. If you don't want to talk now, I just want you to know I'm aware this might have had an impact, so you can come back and let me know if you want to talk about it. Just creating a space. And maybe you could have said in that, like, Mom, when you change your last name, I don't know how, like, does that impact our connection? She'd be like, absolutely not. But just even having a conversation around it at that stage might have reframed it for you versus you figuring out later, like, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. So enoughness is a tough one. How do you think that maybe it shows up? Have you noticed the difference in how it shows up in women versus men?
Yeah, I do think I do personally think men struggle with it as well. Like,
Yeah.
I think, especially if, like, again, like if there wasn't like a father there or a parent figure, like I do think though, like there's a much more kind of like you said, maybe a confidence. Like, I think in some
Yes.
ways it may serve them until it doesn't.
Yep.
Which again, I think for women it serves them until it doesn't either. But I
Yep.
mean serve them in the sense of like maybe in like a capitalistic society or in a society where like men like
Correct.
they want you to be confident and be like I got this, even though they might
Don't
not
have
have
it.
it, or maybe a false confidence,
Yes.
but it can get you far.
Yes.
So I think
That's
in
great.
ways it might not. It will hold them back in areas for sure. But I think in like maybe corporate world or like just certain settings, there can be an element of success if it comes out as like a confidence. I will say that I think maybe I don't know if it's like moving through it even though it's there. Like maybe that, like, I don't know, like maybe there's not as much of a hesitation or a stopping of doing something because of it, like
Yeah.
doing it anyway, and it's still coming up and surfacing in the peripheral. Like it's coming
Almost
up.
like it's happening to them, but they're less aware of it. So it's not getting in their way of being able to show up and act and do and be.
Amazing.
It's there.
No,
It's
I
kind of
definitely,
vibrating in the
yeah,
background, but I think we're a bit more self-aware of it, and that's why it can like put more sand in the gears, I feel like, for women. Um and then, if you're women talking to other women, we're kind of vibrating the same frequencies back and forth to each other. And I've learned that in being in relationship with, probably thinking in my marriage, right? When I say things to my husband indicating my struggle with enoughness, his responses back to me are kind of like, "Are you crazy? Like, is everything okay? Like, why are you even? You are so far from having like the right perception of yourself, of what the truth is." And then he'll be like, "This is what the outside looks like.
right.
This is what you're perceived as." And then it's like, really? So it kind of, I think that's one of the nice things that can happen when, you have that male female dynamic of like,
Absolutely.
you share some of that and they go like, "On what planet
Yeah.
did you come up with like all of this stuff that's like not even who you are?" And like, maybe some of this stuff is a thing, but it's so small in comparison to the things about you that are great. I will say I think that's probably something that happens in your being in relationship with Seth that has like made you be like, "Man, this is a great human for me." The way
Oh,
that he helped
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
shift your orientation of your view and perspective of yourself. That's one of the
And
things I've gotten.
100%. I also think like, I mean, I've always like said it, but like wanting someone who like expands upon you, like not like, I don't believe in like them like fulfilling you or like, but like
Mm-hmm.
expands upon you. And also I think like there was so many times where I think he believed in like this higher version of myself more than I did, where I'm like, what are you talking about? Where he'll, even the other day where I'm like getting emotional, but even the other day we were talking about it, he's like, we're like, I always saw that in you. And
What was he saying about, what did he always see in you?
that's what I'm trying to remember now. Like
I love the
exactly what it
emotion
was.
because it's important. It's okay,
Yeah.
man. Last episode, I was like, if you can't, if you're not watching,
Like, where the hell are these tissues? But I
I'm
think we
like,
had them
mine are
when we were
right
at your
here.
house. Yeah. Um, wasn't expecting that. But yeah, the other, I don't know what it was. Oh, you know what I think it was? I think I was, again, having one of these like vulnerable moments in these like coaching sessions that we're doing for my coaching training.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, just because it's a really quick, funny story, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I had to do like a gestational diabetes test and all this. So I was like, I just got back in Uber. I literally just threw up from this
Yep.
test. Like, I
I
feel,
spoke to you that day.
yeah. I'm like, I feel very, very off. So it's like, I definitely can't hold space as like a coach for somebody, but
Mm-hmm.
no one else wanted, I wasn't planning on being a client that day either, but it was kind of like crickets when people were like not volunteering. So I'm like, well, I can be a client. Like, that's easy. Like, whatever. So I'm picking like the most silly thing what I thought. I was like, what are you struggling with today? And I'm like, I don't know, just like showing up on Instagram like consistently. And it turned into this like it was about like enoughness and worthiness and like
Yep.
this idea of like having to like work hard or like be so long story short, it came into this like very turned into like a therapy session. I ended up talking to Isaiah about it after the fact, but at the end she was very 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 sweet, but she said something like about like my energy and just that like you're gonna do like amazing things or something like that. And I was sharing with Stefan after, and I'm like, she could have just been saying it. I was like, but I was shared, and he was like, I already knew that about you, like from the moment I met you. Like, and he was kind of joking. He's like, but do you think I was gonna marry you like if I didn't have like these like knowing like this like
Like,
greatness that's
I'm
in
pretty
you?
good at analyzing, and I chose you because there was greatness in you, not just because you're cute. And you're
Yeah.
like, really? I thought it was just, yeah, that's,
So yeah. So like
I
I
thought,
just I
no,
think the
okay.
idea, sorry, the idea of like I don't know, again, I don't know how I'm going back to I feel like relationships, but choosing someone who like when you especially if you struggle with these feelings of enoughness, you do need to do the work yourself, but having that person who is going to like see that highest version of yourself and like prop you up when you can't see it or you're in that low place. So them not like sinking with you or being like, yeah, I don't know, I can get through this either, but like still holding that space for you and like seeing that within you, even if you're like having your moments where you're struggling with it. for
So I
sure.
love that you said that because I think what you're saying is part of what your antidote has been for your struggle with enoughness is having chosen a partner who obviously challenges you and all these other things, but also celebrates you and has a perspective of you that is more grand and authentic and uplifting and encouraging. Like what we want to do for the people that are listening, we've managed to somehow end up with partners who are doing for us what we want to do for others. And I think that just to be, I don't think we're saying go find a man to oxygenate you and then that's how you'll be able to. So I hope that's not the
No.
takeaway. The takeaway is just sharing that part of how we've been able to do better in our journey with enoughness is by being blessed with partnerships that are oxygenating those things in us that help us to, when we hear who do you think you are, their answers are able to kind of come up and go, I am somebody who has a gift to give. I am somebody who has something nice to do in the world. I have purpose. I have greatness. The story just happens to be Steph, but I will say that also it's not just Steph, right? You and I have done that for each other.
Yeah.
We have other women in our lives that have one of your really good friends been like, girl, you're doing it. Like she's, listening to it and being like, you're doing it. Like, and so it's your village. And if your village happens to include, some testosterone in it that can help, great. It's nice. But it's the village. And if I'm trying to think, because I always try to think of going to like the very, very most minimal version of being able to do something. If you don't have anyone in your village, I'm struggling thinking like, how can you find that encouragement? And I guess I'll say keep listening because we intend to have conversations that'll be encouraging and empowering. And we are going to figure out how to create community that can be connected so that, if you don't have it anywhere else, this can be a place where every week you're going to get some encouraging, empowering conversation to let you know there is more. God don't make no junk. He created each one of us with something that was purposeful and intentional, that was meant to be done by us, through us, with superpowers created. The Bible calls them gifts that were implanted in us before we were born. And the process of growth and development oxygenates that stuff. And eventually you come to learn what some of your gifts and superpowers are. And then it's about going out into the world and using them. So super proud of you, Eden, for going through the process of doing it afraid. I think the story that you just told is a quintessential example of I'm doing it and I have doubt and uncertainties and I have moments where I'm like, why am I even doing this? Should I be doing this? Who am I going to be able to help? And yet one foot in front of the other, showing up and raising your hand and volunteering even on days when you're feeling crappy. You put yourself in a place to be able to get that positive feedback. And now that's one nugget that goes into the bucket of I am enough. And if you hadn't kind of shown up for yourself that way that day, that deposit in the enoughness bank wouldn't have been made. So maybe the crystallization that I'm thinking of around enoughness is it's very similar for me or it's analogous in my thinking around imposter syndrome. It ain't going to go away. It's probably going to find different ways to show up. I think it gets more sophisticated, like the basic level it shows up and then you address that and then it finds a more elegant, sophisticated, creative way to show up to try to pull you down. And talking about it, finding things to eradicate it, having a village, using the people and places and spaces in your life to be able to say, I'm struggling with this. You'd be surprised that the feedback isn't going to be like, yeah, because you aren't enough. It's the feedback is me. No, that's not right. The way I like to describe it. I have a girlfriend where a few girlfriends where we say, your crown is crooked. That's all, right? The queen maker analogy is like, I'm a queen and sometimes my crown gets crooked and I forget. And I'm actually remembering a moment this week where I had a rough, a rough pocket this week where my crown, I don't know if it got crooked or it fell off. And like, but it's okay for those moments. That's part of the journey. That's part of it's part of the journey. But just remembering that, continue to try to find ways to put yourself in places and spaces where people can make deposits into your enoughness tank. And the other thing I'll say to that is, in the same way people make some deposits in yours, do all that you can to make deposits in others, because it's I think while we really appreciate the deposits into our bank, it's in the making the deposit in someone else's that we find the most our joy. So the ability to pour into someone else's tank and go, you are enough. Of course you're enough. That encouraging and empowering thing actually kind of resonates back in as being really beneficial. So anything you want to leave our audience with regarding enoughness?
I think all of that, and I think also too, even when it's hard though, but like you also like loving on yourself and even listening, even if it's journaling, kind of like those 3 gratitudes, like 3 things you love about yourself. So just getting used to also you appreciating it. So you're kind of pouring into your
Yeah.
also where it's not like, because then right, you don't want to get to the point that like you need other people's
Right.
to prop you up, but 100% you do. I feel like you need that as well, like the connection and the support there, especially when you feel at like your lowest or you are struggling with that. But then making sure you're also appreciating yourself and starting to like love on yourself and see yourself, I guess, in that light also. So for me, it's definitely, I'm big journaling, affirmations, like, yeah, all of that. So
I am enough.
yeah.
I am enough. Makes me think of that. There's what was it? If you are you there, God, is me, Margaret. The little girls were like, we must increase our bust. It's like, I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. And sometimes saying it until the first 7 times you didn't believe it, the 8th time you're starting to, the 12th time you're like, the 15th time you're like, all right, this is happening. I got it, So it's kind of forcing yourself to do it even when you don't believe it, because in the consistency in saying it, you'll start to even shift and create a new pathway in your brain that starts to realize like, oh, it was just my crown with a little crooked today. Overall, my baseline is I am enough. So thank you for joining us in this conversation of enoughness. We touched a tickled piece of it. We probably could have had so much more, so we'll find other ways to discuss this topic because it's going to continue to come up. But thank you for joining us. We hope that we have encouraged and challenged you to consider ways to affirm within yourself your enoughness. Until next time. Remember to unlock your queen
And unleash her dreams.